Keira Holloway sat in the back row of Math 405, the only black girl in a sea of prestige. When she raised her hand, the professor smirked and told her, "Stick to simpler majors." The class laughed. Weeks later, her assignment was returned with a handwritten note. Slow-minded, but polite. That same girl just built a math algorithm that shocked Silicon Valley. But right before her big win, someone tried to erase her name from the list. Cut to title card. Math professor labeled a black girl slow learner. Her project just won the university's top prize. Before we deep dive into this interesting story, subscribe to our channel and tell us where are you watching from. Share in the comments below. Keira Holloway's footsteps echoed against the polished floor of the mathematics building, like an uninvited guest. She clutched a used backpack, the strap fraying near her shoulder, and double-checked the room number scribbled in her planner. Math 405, Advanced Theoretical System, a place most freshmen weren't supposed to enter. But Keira was different. Or at least she used to believe that. She paused at the door, inhaled, and stepped into the amphitheater-style lecture hall. Dozens of students, mostly white and already seated, barely noticed her. She found a spot in the far back row, not because she wanted to hide, but because the silence felt safer up there. Down front stood Dr. Grant Ellison, a silver-haired professor with a reputation so pristine it was practically mythological. National awards, government consulting gigs, published in journals Keira had only seen quoted in textbooks. His posture was perfect, his blazer pressed, his eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. He didn't look up when Keira entered. He didn't need to. As the clock struck 9:00 a.m., Dr. Ellison cleared his throat, clicked a remote, and his lecture slides came to life. No welcome, no smile, just let's begin. Keira tried to keep up, scribbling equations into her notebook, heart pounding. The content moved fast, but she'd studied ahead all summer. Still, something felt off. She sensed it within the first 10 minutes, how his gaze passed right over her, how he called on students with surnames like Whitmore, Caldwell, or Turner, but skipped over her raised hand twice. Then came the introductions. Each student had to state their name, background, and reason for taking this advanced course. When it was Keira's turn, she stood, hands clenched behind her back. Keira Holloway. I'm from Southview, Georgia. I competed in regional math bowls and placed first in the state finals last year. I want to study data theory and help optimize school systems, especially underserved ones. A few students nodded, impressed, but Dr. Ellison merely blinked. You're a freshman, correct? He asked. Yes, sir. A pause. That's ambitious. The way he said it wasn't praise. It was disapproval dressed in civility. And where did you say you studied? Southview High, sir. He nodded slowly, lips pursed. Not exactly a feeder school for this department, but all right. There was a flicker of laughter near the front. Keira's stomach knotted. She sat back down, cheeks hot. The message was clear. You don't belong. Over the next hour, Dr. Ellison peppered the class with complex problems. He'd walk through the rows, stopping near students to ask them to solve equations aloud. Every time he neared Keira's section, he diverted, but when she made a small error during one of the practice proofs, mislabeling a variable, he finally turned to her. Miss Holloway, he said, his voice slicing the air, perhaps this course is a bit beyond your current level. We don't want anyone feeling lost. The phrase landed harder than the mistake. A few students stole glances at her, some curious, others amused. She didn't look up. She couldn't. The class ended, and students shuffled out. Keira stayed behind, pretending to organize her notes until the room emptied. Outside, she walked across the campus quad, the sharp autumn breeze stinging her face. The ancient oaks overhead rustled like they were whispering secrets she'd never be told. The university was beautiful. Grand brick buildings, sculptures, ivy-covered walls, but it felt like a fortress she'd entered without permission. That night, in her dorm, Keira stared at her textbook but couldn't read a word. She replayed the day over and over. Was she overreacting? Was it all in her head? But the echo of not exactly a feeder school clung to her like smoke. The next class, she tried harder, showed up early, sat closer. She solved problems in her head before others even tried. But when Dr. Ellison handed out the first graded assignment, something inside her shifted. Her paper was face down. When she flipped it, she didn't see the grade first. She saw the message. Clearly bright, but a slow learner needs fundamental remediation before tackling this material. It wasn't feedback. It was dismissal. A label, written in ink. The grade, C-. Her hand trembled. She looked around, but no one else's paper had commentary. Just marks, numbers, grades. She waited after class, her voice trembling as she approached Dr. Ellison's desk. "Excuse me, sir. I wanted to ask about the comment." He didn't look up from his laptop. "I stand by my assessment. You show potential, but you're struggling with foundational logic. This isn't remedial math, Miss Holloway. But this assignment was on algorithms I've already done in high school," she said softly. "Is there something specific I got wrong?" He sighed, finally met her eyes. "You're not the first student from a substandard school to misjudge the rigor here. Take the time to build your basics. Maybe consider tutoring." And just like that, she was dismissed again. Keira walked out slowly, but this time there was no confusion, no doubt. This wasn't about math. It wasn't about the syllabus, the algorithm, or a mislabeled variable. It was about who was holding the pen and who was being told to erase themselves. As she stepped into the cold again, heart heavy but eyes open, she made a quiet vow. She would not drop this class. She would not let this man define her. But she also knew this was just the beginning. That night, while reviewing her notes, Keira noticed something odd about the grading rubric. And when she compared hers to a classmate's nearly identical answers, their paper had no written comments, and an A-. The next class began like the others, silent anticipation, flickering fluorescent lights, and Dr. Ellison's shoes clicking against the tile with practiced authority. Keira sat in the second row this time, not by accident. After spotting the grading discrepancy between her paper and the white students' near-identical answers, she'd made a decision. She wouldn't disappear into the background. If she was going to be watched, then she'd be seen on her own terms. That morning she had reviewed the lecture material twice. She was ready, more than ready to engage, to question, to make her presence felt. Ellison launched into a proof on combinatorial logic. His chalk moved in clean lines across the board, letters and symbols flowing effortlessly like a language only he believed he spoke fluently. The room followed along, some students lost, others pretending to keep up. Then it happened. "Any questions before we move on?" he asked, turning toward the class. Keira raised her hand. It was the only one. Ellison paused, a slow glance in her direction, like someone choosing whether or not to swat a fly. He nodded slightly. "Yes, Miss Holloway." She stood to speak, voice steady. "I was wondering, on the second part of the proof, you skipped over the variable redefinition in step 4. Shouldn't that create a conflict with the initial condition, unless we recast the constraint?" Silence followed. It wasn't a challenge, just a genuine mathematical observation. Sharp, even. A few students turned toward her. Surprised. Ellison blinked. The faintest twitch touched the corner of his mouth. Not a smile. Something tighter. "Miss Holloway," he said, walking a few steps closer to her row. "We try not to overcomplicate things with hypotheticals when the fundamentals still need grasping." A few chuckles broke out. Nervous laughter, not joy. She hadn't made a joke. "I just meant..." He cut her off, tone cooler now. "Perhaps this is why students are encouraged to stick to majors that match their strengths. I assume your scholarship doesn't require you to remain in theoretical mathematics." The laughter grew louder now, less nervous. It wasn't what he said. It was how he said it. Calculated, on cue, performed for the room. Kira's heart dropped, but her face didn't flinch. "I'm just trying to learn," she replied softly. Ellison nodded, like he'd just proven his point. "Well then, let's keep listening before attempting to revise the logic board." The moment passed, but not for her. Something inside cracked, not broken, just exposed. From that day forward, the classroom became a stage of passive-aggressive theater. Dr. Ellison began cold-calling Keira, often with the most abstract problems. Not to challenge, but to corner. He'd walk to the edge of her desk and ask questions laced with traps. "Miss Holloway, since you're so eager to participate, why don't you tell us what happens when we inverse the vector matrix without isolating the coefficient?" If she paused, he interrupted. "Let's circle back to someone else." If she answered, he smirked. "Close, but not quite. Let's refine our expectations." It was never about the math. It was about the moment. About reducing her, publicly, piece by piece. Her classmates noticed. Some shifted uncomfortably. Others began to avoid sitting near her. No one ever spoke of it out loud. But in the shared glances and quiet sidesteps, Keira could see the social message unfolding. You're a liability. Still, she didn't quit. Not when Marley Cross, a sharp-eyed white girl from Chicago, approached her after class and whispered, "He doesn't do that to anyone else." Not when her own mother over the phone gently asked, "You sure this school sees you the way you see yourself?" And not even when Dr. Ellison used her name on the board. It was during the midweek lecture on flawed algorithm design. As a teachable moment, he projected a student's incorrect homework answer anonymously on screen. But it wasn't anonymous. The handwriting was unmistakable. It was Keira's. "This is what happens when logic is applied emotionally," he said, pacing before the projection. The answer appears intuitive, but collapses under real scrutiny. She felt her skin burn as the classroom sat in muted discomfort. It wasn't just a critique, it was a performance. Her mistake, her identity, her presence, being dissected under the guise of rigor. When class ended, Keira didn't move. She waited until the last student left. Only then did she gather her things with mechanical calm. Outside, the campus buzzed with normalcy. Fall leaves drifted across stone pathways. Students rushed to their next lecture. Laughter carried from the dining quad. But Keira moved through it all in silence, her world narrowing. She wasn't failing. She was being targeted. That realization hurt more than the words themselves, because it meant every effort she made wouldn't be judged by merit, but by how well she could survive someone else's prejudice. In the evenings, she stopped going to the common room. Her dormmates had grown quiet around her, especially after the day her slow learner comment had leaked through a whispered hallway retelling. There were no slurs, no direct insults, just that smirking, knowing glance of people who believed the story before knowing the girl. She studied harder, worked deeper, but the tests told a different story. No matter how accurately she completed the work, her grades lingered in the B to C range. Meanwhile, students who fumbled through class discussions openly compared notes and received higher scores. It came to a head 2 weeks later, when midterms were returned. Dr. Ellison handed them out in silence. As always, Keira flipped hers over. B-. Again. She scanned the notes, vague deductions, unexplained red marks, and a comment that read, "Still shows signs of mental drift. Work on clarity of focus." Mental drift? She blinked. What did that even mean? That's when she felt it. The click of a phone camera. Subtle, quick. She turned her head just fast enough to catch Jeremy Linton, a smug-faced student 2 rows back, lowering his phone. He didn't even look embarrassed. Instead, he grinned, then looked down. Texted something. Keira's eyes followed the motion, the faint buzz of his phone, then a matching buzz from Rachel Dempsey, a girl sitting diagonally to his left. Rachel glanced at her phone, stifled a smile, then whispered something to the girl next to her. The realization hit like a punch. They were sharing her grades, not just mocking them, but distributing them. She wasn't just the professor's target now, she was the class's joke. But why? Because she dared to raise her hand. Because she didn't look like the rest of them? Because she wore her natural hair tied back in a twist bun, and didn't use buzzwords in study groups. She felt her throat tighten, but didn't move. She didn't flinch. But inside her chest, a storm was starting. A new one. The kind that didn't settle quietly. That evening, as Keira sat alone in her dorm, her inbox pinged with a message titled, "They're keeping records of you." The sender was anonymous, and attached was a screenshot of something that didn't belong to any student. It looked like an internal faculty grading document. And next to her name were the words "slow-minded but polite." The screenshot haunted Keira. Slow-minded but polite. It wasn't just a comment, it was a brand. Something typed with casual cruelty, stored somewhere within the university's private systems. That someone had sent it to her anonymously made it worse. It meant others had seen it. It meant they were watching. She read the subject line over and over. "They're keeping records of you." The document itself looked like a grading spreadsheet. Rows of names, course codes, color-coded performance tags, and handwritten annotations imported from PDF margins. Some notes were simple, inconsistent, misses deadlines, but next to her name, the language had teeth. Slow-minded but polite. Requires monitoring. Watch for escalation. Escalation of what? She sat frozen in her desk chair, heart thudding like a metronome in overdrive. Outside her dorm window, the quad was quiet, too quiet. She thought about forwarding the file to the dean. She thought about writing to student affairs. But who would believe her? Ellison had tenure. He had prestige. She had a partial scholarship, and a reputation that was already being twisted in real time. It didn't take long for the whispers to follow. The next day, someone posted anonymously on the campus confession page, "Is it just me? Or is that girl in Ellison's class getting special treatment even though she can't keep up?" Another student commented, "I heard she tried to accuse him of discrimination, already lol." She hadn't said a word to anyone. But somehow, they knew. In the dining hall, she noticed a shift. People she'd shared tables with 2 weeks ago suddenly sat elsewhere. Study group invites stopped showing up in her inbox. Her name, once neutral, was now a story passed between tables in quiet tones. She became the one who's struggling. It wasn't what people said. It was the way they stopped saying anything at all. Even in class, Dr. Ellison's indifference had evolved. He no longer cold-called her. He simply ignored her. During problem-solving sessions, he split students into groups and quietly reassigned her from the more advanced cohorts. She was given problems 2 levels below the rest, with no explanation. When she asked about it, he replied without turning from the whiteboard, "Let's not overextend until we master the basics." Keira stopped raising her hand. She stopped trying to fit into circles that had already closed. But someone was watching. Someone who wasn't whispering. Marley Cross. She was new. A transfer student from Wisconsin. White, sharp-tongued, and always scribbling notes in a red leather-bound journal. In a school full of perfectly manicured, prep-coded personalities, Marley was loud in a different way. Combat boots. Vintage t-shirts. She ran a student blog called Policy Poison, known for exposing shady administration moves, unethical professors, and the occasional fraternity scandal. Marley had noticed things. First, the way Dr. Ellison's tone shifted when addressing Keira. Then, how the classroom changed when Keira spoke. How students tuned out. How eye rolls appeared. How silence always followed. She waited until after class one day, then followed Keira outside. "Hey," Marley called out. Keira turned, guarded. "Yeah, I've been documenting something. I think you need to see it." Keira blinked. "Documenting?" Marley reached into her bag and pulled out a slim folder filled with printed screenshots, time-stamped messages, and transcriptions. "I've been tracking patterns in this department. Professors who show bias but mask it with language like rigor and objectivity. Dr. Ellison's name comes up a lot. But with you it's different. It's not subtle anymore. It's strategic." Keira hesitated. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because silence is complicity," Marley said bluntly. "And I'm not built to be quiet." Keira studied her. This girl didn't speak like the others. She didn't pity her. She didn't coddle. She just saw. They started meeting after class. At first, cautiously, Keira didn't want to believe she needed an ally. She didn't want the label victim. She wanted to earn her place. She wanted her math to speak louder than the whispers. But Marley's evidence grew harder to ignore. She had screen-recorded lectures, highlighting the way Dr. Ellison never once affirmed Keira's answers. She mapped seating charts, showing how Keira had been physically and academically isolated over 4 weeks. She gathered testimonies from 2 former students who had transferred out of his class, and both were women of color. "He teaches through erasure," Marley said one night, as they sat in the library. "Not failure. Erasure. He doesn't fail you on paper. He just makes you disappear." Keira looked down at the spreadsheet she still couldn't delete from her inbox. Slow-minded but polite. She looked back up at Marley. "I don't want to be a cause. I want to be a contender." Marley leaned in. "Then let's make sure they don't erase you." But things escalated quickly after that. One Monday morning, Dr. Ellison assigned a complex algorithm group project, dividing the class into 5-person teams. Keira waited for her name to be called. It never was. She raised her hand. "Sir, I wasn't assigned to a group." He looked at his clipboard. "Ah, that's right. I moved you to the observation cohort. You'll be reviewing peer structures instead of building your own." She stared. "But I signed up for full credit. This adjustment will allow you to engage with the material without being overwhelmed." The class said nothing. No one objected. Keira felt her chest tighten again, like she was slipping down a slope she never agreed to stand on. Later that day, Marley stormed into their study nook in the humanities building, waving her laptop. "He's done this before." "What?" Marley spun it toward her. "Ellison. I got into the public faculty files. Most are clean. His has redacted complaint numbers. But I traced one." Kira's mouth went dry. "Traced? I know a guy in the Student Governance Council. He gave me access to archived complaint summaries. Look at this. On screen was a record labeled 2017. Department of Mathematical Sciences. Conduct review. Confidential. It named no student, but the details were damning. Repeated use of language. Diminishing student intellect. Patterns of excluding minority students from higher-level engagement. Notes include, does not possess sufficient logical scaffolding for graduate work. Case closed. Insufficient evidence. Professor retained under administrative discretion. Keira swallowed hard. That sounds like him. Marley nodded. There's more. I found a blog, buried deep by a black grad student from 4 years ago. She dropped out, said Ellison made her feel like a parasite in her own department, called her aggressively optimistic, and told her she was a charity case. Kira's vision swam, like the room had tilted.
And no one did anything, she whispered.
Marley's face hardened. Not when tenure's on the table. They sat in silence. Then Keira reached across the table and tapped the screen. Print everything, she said. You ready to go public? No, Keira said, standing slowly. I'm ready to fight smarter. Just as they began organizing their evidence, Marley's phone buzzed. An anonymous tip with the subject line, check the internal audit logs. He's modifying grades. Attached was a single line of altered code from the grading system, and next to Kira's name. The original grade had been manually changed, from an A- to a B-. The line of code sat on Marley's laptop like a blade between truths. Original grade. Modified grade. User access. Ellison, timestamp 11:06 p.m., 1 day before grades were released. Keira stared at it in disbelief. Her stomach dropped, not from surprise but confirmation. The quiet dread she'd carried for weeks now had digital evidence. He's not just biased, she said, voice barely a whisper. He's falsifying grades. Marley leaned back, running a hand through her tangled blonde hair. And the worst part is, he knows no one's watching. Because no one ever has. That night, they met in the library's silent archive wing, a shadowed floor few students ever visited. Surrounded by aging yearbooks, dusty thesis binders, and filing cabinets, they opened a different kind of file, the one hidden between the lines of institutional pride. Marley had pulled together more from the Governance Council's old student feedback archives and past faculty disciplinary logs. It took scraping through years of anonymized summaries, but the pattern emerged like bruises under a black light. Complaint 1. 2006. Undergraduate, black female. Accused Ellison of unfair grading and verbal belittlement. Labeled inconclusive. Complaint 2. 2011. Graduate student Latina. Reported systematic exclusion from research opportunities. Closed with resolved internally. Complaint 3. 2010. Undergraduate black female. Claimed repeated public embarrassment in lecture settings. Result student withdrew from course. Complaint 4. 2019. Unnamed student. No public description. Case sealed. Each line had the same thread. Women of color, challenging Ellison's treatment, and being dismissed through language like insufficient evidence, administrative discretion, and internal resolution. He builds it like a formula, Marley murmured, flipping through a printed stack. Discredit, humiliate, and if they push back, paper it over. Keira sat motionless, numb. Why didn't anyone stop him? Because tenure isn't just a shield, Marley said. It's a fortress, especially in departments like his. STEM, high grant revenue, prestige rankings. He's untouchable, or at least, he used to be. Keira ran her fingers over one of the old reports. A phrase stood out. Student displayed difficulty adapting to academic rigor. The language was the same. The condescension, copied and pasted across years. Same script, different victims. She stared blankly ahead, eyes misting. All this time she thought she was alone. That maybe she'd imagined it. That maybe she wasn't trying hard enough. But now, she saw it for what it was. A legacy of academic racism disguised as tradition. It's not just him, she said suddenly, voice rising. It's the system that protects him. The silence. The complicity. Marley nodded. Quiet. We'll break it. They decided to escalate. No more waiting for anonymous tips. Marley began reaching out to former students, posting anonymous surveys on alumni boards, even cross-referencing old graduation data against department exit interviews. It didn't take long to find them. One by one, the stories came in. A black math major from 2007, who had changed majors after Dr. Ellison told her in office hours, "You're bright, but not analytically sharp enough for theoretical work." A Latina student, who was denied entry into a departmental honors project after Ellison claimed she lacked conceptual endurance. A biracial woman who was removed from a research assistant position, without explanation, after she corrected Ellison in front of a visiting scholar. Each story was a match, and together they became a fire. Keira printed each one and taped them to her dorm wall, her own warboard of injustice. She didn't need permission to pursue the truth. She needed the truth to be undeniable. But then came the resistance. The moment Marley posted an anonymous exposé draft on her blog, Policy Poison, titled, "The Professor Who Graded Away Our Futures," the university's administration reached out, quietly. A firm email, no threats. Just concern. "We encourage you to bring issues through the appropriate internal channels." But Marley knew what that meant. "They want us to vanish into procedure," she said, slamming her laptop shut. "They want time to scrub, to warn him, to sanitize the story." Keira crossed her arms. "Then we don't wait." They prepared for fallout. Keira wrote a statement but didn't release it yet. She still wanted proof that couldn't be buried. Something from inside. And then, just as suddenly as it all started, a plain, unmarked envelope appeared under her dorm door. No name, no return address. Just the smell of stale air and a faint grease smudge on one corner. Inside were 6 pages, copied notes from what looked like internal grading logs. The kind professors kept for private tracking, not official record. The first 3 pages were mundane. Student names, numeric scores, progress remarks. But page 4 made her breath hitch. Student Holloway. Keira. Initial midterm grade. Comment. Overperforming. Possibly has outside assistance. Final grade submitted. Justification. Cannot validate independent work quality. She stared at the phrase. Cannot validate independent work quality. It was an accusation. Unfounded. Silent. Hidden behind administrative language, but loud enough to alter her academic future. She flipped through the rest. There were others. A black sophomore named Dana C., marked as argumentative. Adjust down. A Latina grad student noted as ambitious but uncoachable. No support recommendation. This wasn't just casual bias. This was methodical sabotage. She looked around her dorm. The taped notes on her wall, the silent phone, the unread messages. She thought of the girl from 2017 who dropped out, of the anonymous case sealed in 2019. She wasn't the first, but she had a choice. Be one of the last. Keira took a deep breath, folded the papers, and placed them back in the envelope. It was time. That night, Marley decrypted metadata from the leaked logs and discovered something shocking. The documents hadn't come from an outsider. They had been printed from inside Ellison's own department office. Someone on the inside was helping them. The envelope sat on Keira's desk like it didn't belong there, like it knew it carried something too heavy for her small dorm to contain. The edges were worn, slightly crumpled, but the seal was untouched. Marley stood nearby, arms crossed, watching Keira like a bodyguard waiting for a grenade to be pulled. "This came from the inside," Marley said. "We verified the printer ID. It originated from room 402B, in the faculty wing. That's Ellison's corridor." Keira ran her fingers across the flap, her stomach tightening. She had opened emails with harsher words, received grades with crueler intent. But this wasn't an opinion or a comment. This was something deeper. Proof. When she finally unsealed it, the weight of the truth nearly knocked the wind out of her. Inside were 12 sheets of paper. Some copies of spreadsheet entries, others handwritten notes scanned and printed with dark ink. But they all pointed in one direction: Dr. Ellison's private grading system. Every page followed a pattern, each student name aligned with a category: comprehension, participation, analytical depth. But beside the names of Black and Latina students, the notes grew: qualitative, unmeasurable, slippery, tends to over-explain possible insecurity, seems respectful but not intellectually aligned with cohort, would benefit from simpler curriculum. Keira flipped to the 6th page and felt her hands go cold. There it was, her name. Student, Holloway. Keira. Note. Slow-minded but polite. Shows some enthusiasm but lacks academic maturity. Monitor performance trajectory for adjustment. She didn't move. Didn't blink. Her pulse drummed behind her eyes. Monitor for adjustment, she whispered. Marley leaned over. That's code for justify a downgrade. He's building paper trails in case he gets questioned. But only for students like you. Keira sat back, a quiet rage starting to boil inside her. I kept wondering why I was always a half step behind in grading. Why I couldn't close the gap no matter how clean my work was, she said slowly. Turns out the game was fixed from the beginning. Marley placed a hand on the desk. We can go to the dean with this. No more questions. No more speculation. This blows the doors off. But Keira didn't respond. Her mind spun in another direction. She looked at the final page, a handwritten chart comparing multiple students on the same assignment. The same rubric, same problem set. Her name was third from the bottom with a note. Response lacks mathematical intuition. Possibly rehearsed. The student directly above her, Rachel Dempsey, had similar logic, and yet was marked A, with a note. Shows creativity and engagement. Keira closed the folder. I don't want to give this to someone who'll file it away into a committee, she said. Marley blinked. What are you talking about? This is gold.
No, Keira said, firmer this time. This is war, but I'm not giving them the chance to reduce me to paperwork. If Ellison thinks I'm not capable, then I'll build something so undeniable, so advanced, so necessary, that even the people rooting against me will have to acknowledge it.
Marley narrowed her eyes. You're going public? Keira shook her head. I'm going mathematical. She walked to her bed, pulled out her laptop and began typing into the university's research and innovation portal. Marley stepped closer, reading over her shoulder. Wait, are you signing up for the math innovation competition? Keira nodded, her voice steady, but her hands trembling. I'm going to submit a solo project. No partners, no protection. Just me, my mind, and what they said I lacked. The university's annual Innovation in Mathematics Showcase was considered a crown jewel of academic competition, typically reserved for seniors or grad students. It featured projects ranging from complex algorithm modeling to mathematical solutions for global logistics, economic systems, and AI mechanics. No freshman had ever entered solo, let alone one with a target on her back. You realize this is a public event, right? Marley said cautiously. It's broadcast, judges, faculty, private sector investors. It's high stakes. That's why it matters, Keira replied. I don't want to survive Ellison's class. I want to rewrite the narrative of what they think someone like me can do. For the next several days, Keira barely left her room. Her wall became a mosaic of diagrams, formulas, and idea webs connected by string and highlighter ink. Her notebook filled with sketches of an algorithm she'd been imagining since high school. A real-time, adaptive learning model designed for underfunded classrooms. One that used limited data to identify how students actually learn, rather than how they test. It wasn't theoretical anymore. It was personal. She skipped meals, ignored messages, tuned out the whispers still crawling through dorm group chats. But she felt them. In the dining hall, someone muttered, "Is she still trying to be the next Katherine Johnson, or whatever?" In class, Rachel Dempsey whispered, "That's what happens when people with average talent think they're the main character." Even Ellison caught wind. At the end of one lecture, he glanced in Keira's direction and said, loud enough to be heard, "Some students get distracted by ambition when they should be focusing on mastery. Innovation is for those who understand fundamentals." He didn't name her. He didn't need to. But Keira didn't flinch. She came back to her room and coded harder. When Marley offered to help, Keira said no. I have to do this with my name alone. 3 nights before the project submission deadline, Keira's laptop crashed. All her files gone. She stared at the blue screen in horror. Her project, her codebase, weeks of work, wasn't backed up to the cloud. Panic ripped her chest. She rebooted. Nothing. Rebooted again. Still nothing. Tears welled up, but before they could fall, her phone buzzed. It was a message from an unknown number. You left your files open on the lab desktop. I saved your work. You're welcome. Attached was a zipped file folder. Inside her entire codebase. Recovered. Marley's jaw dropped when she saw it. Someone's watching your back, she said. Keira opened the file. Scanned for alterations. Everything was intact. Unchanged. Whoever it was, they weren't sabotaging her. They were helping. Why would they do this? She asked aloud. Because not everyone behind closed doors agrees with Ellison, Marley said. And maybe they're done being silent too. Keira uploaded the final version of her prototype into the competition portal. The title? Logic for the Lost, a mathematical framework for adaptive equity in learning. Under project contributors, Keira Holloway, solo submission. She hit submit. The confirmation screen flashed green, and just like that, it was done. No turning back. The next morning, Keira received an alert from the competition committee. Her project had been accepted for live presentation, but Dr. Ellison had just been added to the judging panel. The morning after Keira received her acceptance into the competition, she woke up to a thick silence. Not dread, not fear, but the stillness before a storm. She'd stepped into something bigger than grades. Now this was visibility. And visibility, for someone like her, was always a risk. Her project submission had barely been live for 24 hours before the ridicule began. Screenshots circulated in private student chats. The title of her proposal, Logic for the Lost, was reshared with laughing emojis, sarcastic commentary, and screenshots from her social media. She really thinks she's about to change public education with Python. Isn't this the girl who can't even get a B in Ellison's class? She wrote a whole dissertation for kids who can't multiply fractions. Keira read every line, not because she wanted to, but because she knew exactly how they viewed her, as a tryhard, an outsider, a stereotype trying to play genius. But she didn't stop. Instead, she dug in. Day after day, she stayed in the far lab of the mathematics building. Room 217D, a forgotten cold corner with bad lighting and barely functioning outlets. But it became hers. She dragged in her own keyboard, kept snacks stashed under the desk, and left cryptic formulas scribbled across the whiteboards. This wasn't just a project now. It was a statement. She built her algorithm from the ground up. A model that didn't just adjust for answers but for learning behavior. It measured pause times, adapted based on error patterns, and created personalized math journeys for students who'd been discarded by standardized education systems. The beauty of it? It was accessible, lightweight, and coded to function even on outdated school hardware, machines often ignored by elite developers. But the moment she presented her abstract to the faculty mentors for early feedback, the real storm began. She stood in front of a small review panel, 4 professors and 1 graduate advisor. They skimmed her submission, murmuring among themselves. "This is ambitious," said one. "Doesn't quite align with the traditional expectations of mathematical innovation," said another. "We're looking for theoretical depth here, not socio-educational commentary disguised as tech." Keira kept her face still. "I'm solving a systems problem," she said calmly. "Math is the language. The failure is structural." The youngest professor nodded slowly, intrigued, but the others looked unconvinced. When she left the room, no one said good luck. She returned to the lab that night with her resolve sharper than ever. She stayed past midnight, her fingers raw from typing, her eyes bloodshot from staring at line after line of code. Each formula she wrote felt like an answer to every comment that tried to reduce her to a struggle story. She wasn't writing for applause. She was building proof. But even the campus itself seemed to push back. One night she returned from a snack run to find her whiteboards wiped clean. All her formulas gone. Someone had accessed the locked lab. The marker caps were scattered across the floor. Her stomach turned. She checked her files, thankfully. Backed up. Still the message was clear. "We see you, and we want you to stop." Marley demanded she report it. "They can't keep doing this. First the comments, then the grade manipulation, now this." But Keira shook her head. No police, no faculty, no systems that answer only to themselves. She went right back to work. But the pressure escalated. 2 days before the final competition deadline, Keira walked into the lab and found a folder sitting on her desk. Inside were printouts of her code, marked with red ink. Comments like, "Redundant logic, basic design pattern, not original enough," for academic validation. At first she thought it was another prank, until she saw the initials in the corner of the last page. G. Dr. Grant Ellison. Her throat dried. She scanned the comments again, realizing they weren't just feedback. They were deliberate discrediting, worded in academic terms, but meant to destabilize her. She rushed out of the lab and headed straight to the math building's 3rd floor. Ellison's door was open. He sat at his desk, calmly typing. Like nothing had changed. "I didn't give you permission to access my project," she said. He didn't look up. "The university owns the servers. Anything you build on their property is subject to review. Review or sabotage." That made him pause. He leaned back in his chair and folded his hands. "You're spiraling," he said. "This obsession with injustice, It's distracting you from your limitations. Keira stepped closer.
You changed my grade.
I know. We have the logs. He raised an eyebrow. Unfazed. You'll need more than gossip and guesses to accuse a tenured faculty member of academic misconduct. Do you understand how foolish that sounds, coming from a freshman with a grievance complex? She swallowed hard, but didn't back down. I'm presenting my project. You're not stopping that. Ellison gave a thin, amused smile. Oh, I have no intention of stopping you. Present all you like. Just know that if your submission includes any academic material deemed unoriginal, plagiarized, or ethically questionable, it will be flagged for full academic review. Kira's breath caught. He was laying a trap. Any misstep, any overlooked credit, any snippet of reused code, and he'd bury her under university policy. If you proceed, he said, you may be triggering consequences that go beyond your grade. Keira turned and walked out without another word. Her legs were shaking, but her spine stayed straight. She returned to the lab and tore apart every line of code. She rebuilt the system from scratch, over the next 36 hours, line by line, citation by citation, no shortcuts, no reused libraries, nothing Ellison could weaponize. She didn't sleep. She didn't eat. Marley showed up with tea, granola bars, and grim updates. He's tightening the noose, Marley said. I overheard him telling a colleague that you're on the verge of academic collapse. He wants you to break before the showcase. Keira didn't answer. She was too deep in the rhythm of code, rewriting functions like incantations. This wasn't about just proving she belonged. It was about denying him the ending he'd written for her. She uploaded her final code file 10 minutes before the competition portal closed. Clean. Original. Annotated. Bulletproof. And then, finally, she slept. For the first time in weeks. The next morning, Keira checked her university inbox and saw a new notification. You have been placed under preemptive academic review for the following submission. Logic for the Lost. Filed by Professor Grant Ellison. The summons came not by email, but by envelope. Again, slipped under Kira's dorm door in the early hours of the morning. The notice was official, university sealed and unmistakably cold. Notice of academic review. Your submission, Logic for the Lost, has been flagged for preliminary investigation under Policy 5.3, Potential Intellectual Property Conflict. It was signed by the Academic Integrity Committee. Filed by Professor Grant Ellison. Keira sat on the edge of her bed, envelope in hand, heart clenched so tightly she could barely breathe. This was it. The trap. Ellison had made good on his warning. She didn't cry. She didn't even speak. She stood up slowly, walked to her closet, and pulled out the blazer she'd bought for interviews. The one she never got to wear because professors like Ellison had already decided her path didn't lead anywhere. She called Marley. We're going to the hearing, she said, and I'm not going alone. The disciplinary review took place in a narrow conference room, with long fluorescent lights and a table too wide for conversation to feel human. 3 faculty members sat on one side. Keira sat on the other, with Marley beside her and her laptop bag clutched in her lap like armor. Dr. Ellison was already there, postured with effortless arrogance, a stack of papers at his elbow. The panel chair, a professor of ethics from the humanities department, cleared her throat. We are here today to review a potential academic violation regarding intellectual duplication. Professor Ellison has filed a concern that Miss Holloway's project, Logic for the Lost, may be derivative of a previously submitted algorithm within this university. Keira tilted her head. What project? Ellison spoke without missing a beat. A student capstone from 2019 that attempted a similar adaptive learning concept. While it was not published formally, it is accessible through our digital archives. He slid a packet across the table, printed code, blurred diagrams, old formatting. Keira looked it over quickly. It wasn't the same. Not even close. The 2019 project had been a prototype recommendation tool, built for grading assistance, using fixed formula routing. Her algorithm was dynamic, reactive, personalized. Not even the architecture matched. Still, the faculty began nodding. Similarity. Proximity. It was enough to trigger doubt. That's when Keira reached into her bag and laid her own stack of papers on the table. Before we continue, she said calmly, I'd like to introduce evidence of a pattern of targeted academic misconduct by the complainant. Ellison's smile faltered. She unfolded the leaked grading logs, the altered grade entries, the printed notes with phrases like slow-minded but polite. and adjust down for attitude. Marley slid her laptop across the table. And here, she added, is the server log proving Professor Ellison manually changed Keira's midterm grade from A to B after hours, without academic justification. The room fell silent. The ethics professor leaned forward. Do you have proof these documents are authentic? They were printed from the university's own faculty office, Marley replied. Printer ID and metadata included. Ellison scoffed. This is a distraction. She's manufacturing drama to evade plagiarism charges. Keira didn't blink. I don't need to manufacture anything, she said. I've been under review since the day I walked into your classroom. One of the other committee members, a younger man from the computer science department, began flipping through her documents more carefully. Did you verify this alleged overlap independently, Professor Ellison? He hesitated. The conceptual similarity is intuitive. I recognized it immediately. But you didn't submit a plagiarism report through the proper chain. I wanted to handle it discreetly. Ellison replied. His voice clipped. Keira saw it. The shift. The first crack in his defense. The panel paused the hearing to review the documents. For 45 minutes, Keira and Marley sat outside in silence. The hallway air was thick with tension, the kind that sticks to skin like smoke. Keira stared at the tiled floor. They might still side with him, she whispered. Marley didn't look away. Then we make sure they remember this moment, when the truth surfaces. When they were finally called back in, the ethics professor cleared her throat again, this time softer. We're delaying our final decision pending further review. No disciplinary action will be taken at this time. But Miss Holloway, your project will remain under watch. We encourage you not to publicize this hearing. Keira's chest tightened.
No verdict, no closure, just a stain that wouldn't wash out.
As they stood to leave, Ellison gave her one last look. It wasn't victory. It was venom. She'd exposed him. He hadn't expected that. But even cornered, he still had influence. Outside, the sun had set. Keira and Marley walked across the darkening quad in silence, the glow of dorm lights flickering behind thick windows. Keira stopped near the fountain, suddenly exhausted. I gave them evidence. I showed them the truth. And they still put me on a watch list. They're scared, Marley said. You didn't just challenge a professor, you challenged the illusion of fairness. That's a threat to their whole system. I'm tired, Keira whispered. Marley nodded. Then rest for tonight. But don't you dare stop. Later that evening, Keira returned to her dorm to find her inbox glowing with unread messages. Among them, one stood out. From undisclosed, research invitation. Subject opportunity. Early innovation preview. Body. Miss Holloway, we've been following your submission through internal circles. Would you be willing to present your project privately to a select group of educational tech sponsors? Discretion ensured. We believe your work has potential far beyond the competition. If interested, reply within 48 hours. Keira read the email 3 times. No faculty signatures. No university branding. Just intrigue. She sat back slowly. Someone out there believed in her work. Not as a case file. Not as a liability. But as innovation. She hovered over the reply button. The decision didn't feel like a choice. It felt like destiny. She clicked reply, typed a single sentence, I'm ready, and hit send. Moments later, her screen flickered. A second message arrived. Good. Be prepared. You're not the only one they tried to silence. The email had offered no names, no logos, no formalities, just coordinates, a time and a note. Bring your presentation. Speak only the truth. Keira didn't know what to expect. As she approached the old law building tucked at the edge of campus, it was past dusk, and the winter air nipped at her fingers as she clutched her laptop close. Marley walked beside her, silent but alert, scanning the shadows like a bodyguard. Are we sure this isn't a trap? Marley whispered. If it is, Keira said, then I'm walking straight into it anyway. Inside, the building had been transformed. Long wooden tables lined with black linen stretched across the hall. A single row of chairs faced a projection screen. No university banners. No professors. Just 5 people seated in quiet observation, their silhouettes sharp against the dim lighting. Keira recognized none of them, until her eyes landed on the woman seated farthest to the left. She was composed, striking, with tightly coiled hair and a tailored blazer. A black woman, maybe in her late 30s. Her expression was unreadable. Keira didn't know her name yet, but she'd remember her face forever. The woman nodded once, subtle, but meaningful. A voice called from the end of the room. Miss Holloway, You may begin. No introductions. No welcomes. Keira exhaled. This wasn't a presentation. It was a test. She stepped forward and plugged in her laptop. The screen lit up. Her title appeared. Logic for the Lost. A mathematical framework for adaptive equity in learning. Her fingers didn't shake. She spoke steady and sharp. This algorithm was designed with one goal: identify how students actually learn, especially those overlooked by traditional systems. Not just test scores, not just speed, but behavior, pattern, and response. She clicked to the next slide. Graphs, user models, interface breakdown. It works even on outdated devices. It requires minimal bandwidth. It uses error pattern mapping to adjust the sequence of mathematical concepts, tailoring education to the student, not the system. No one interrupted. No one asked questions. Slide after slide, she poured herself into the rune code. Logic, struggle, clarity. She shared how she coded through nights of silence, how she reverse-engineered bias into mathematical correction, how she taught herself principles even her professors refused to explain. And then, without drama, she ended. Silent. The panel sat still. No clapping, no polite nods, just 5 sets of eyes, stone-faced, impenetrable. "Thank you," she said, her voice echoing in the room like it didn't belong there. She unplugged her laptop, gathered her things, and walked out without looking back. In the hallway, her breath caught in her throat. Her chest tightened. Marley followed, confused. "What the hell was that?" she whispered. No one said anything. No feedback, not even a fake smile. Keira shook her head.
I think that was the feedback.
They stepped into the night. Marley cursed under her breath.
You risked everything.
That was your best shot. Kira's face stayed blank, but her voice cracked. Maybe it was never about the algorithm. Maybe it was about proving that I didn't belong. They turned down the walkway, past the dark corners of the quad. Then footsteps. Quick, precise. Miss Holloway. They turned. The woman from the panel, the black woman in the blazer, was walking fast toward them, heels clicking with purpose. Up close, her presence was even more striking. Not intimidating, commanding. "I didn't want to say anything in that room," she said, "because none of them deserved to hear me say it first." Keira blinked. "Say what?" "That what you just presented is revolutionary." Marley stepped forward, protective. "Then why didn't you say something in there?" The woman gave her a measured look. "Because I needed to confirm something. That you weren't just trying to perform for applause. That you could stand alone." Kira's mouth parted but no words came. "I'm Alicia Danvers," the woman said, "former doctoral candidate in this very university. I left 8 years ago. Filed a grievance after being pushed out of my lab by my white advisor. Said I was too emotionally attached to my work. They buried it. I disappeared." Kira's eyes widened. "You were here with Ellison?" Alicia's eyes darkened. "He wasn't the only one, but he was the worst. I watched him derail student after student, always women of color. That panel, 3 of them, used to sit on the committee that reviewed my complaint." "So why are you here now?" Marley asked. "Because some ghosts don't stay buried forever," Alicia replied. "And some stories, when told right, become blueprints." She reached into her bag and pulled out a sleek, embossed folder. "This is a term sheet. I work with an EdTech equity accelerator now. Virio Labs. We back projects that disrupt traditional academic gatekeeping." She handed it to Keira. Inside was a funding offer.
$120,000 in seed investment.
Non-dilutive. No strings. Just belief. Kira's knees nearly buckled. What is this? You haven't even vetted the source code." Alicia smiled for the first time. "I already have. Before you walked in, we requested access quietly through the competition servers. Your code is clean, elegant, and necessary." Marley was speechless. Keira shook her head slowly, tears threatening. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because you're not just correcting a problem," Alicia said. "You are the correction, and the system is terrified of you." She stepped closer. "But I won't let them do to you what they did to me. I'll mentor you, guide you through the next phase. Build this with you." Keira felt the weight of every insult, every whisper, every grade adjustment pressing against her skin. This wasn't a handout. It was justice. "What about Ellison?" she asked. "He's still on the judging panel. He could kill my public presentation." Alicia's eyes glinted. "Let him try." As they walked away, Kira's phone buzzed. A new message from the university's math department. Due to scheduling conflicts, Professor Ellison has requested to be removed from the competition judging panel, replacement TBA. But attached to the message was a photo, a blurry image of Alicia Danvers and Dr. Ellison, arguing mid-shout outside the faculty building. The photo of Alicia Danvers and Dr. Ellison spread through private message threads like gasoline finding a flame. In it, Alicia stood tall, her jaw clenched, eyes unflinching. Ellison's hand was midair, his mouth twisted mid-sentence, caught in the blur of his unraveling control. No one knew exactly what was said, but it didn't matter. The image said enough. Whispers turned into questions. Questions turned into public threads. And the moment someone anonymously uploaded the image with the caption, "When silence breaks," the comment sections exploded. 3 days later, a blog post appeared on a faculty watchdog site. Title: "The Professor Who Buried Black Brilliance." Byline: anonymous, former student. The exposé didn't hold back. It detailed patterns of academic marginalization, selective grading, project sabotage, and systemic erasure, all under the careful tenure of Dr. Grant Ellison. The author claimed to be one of Ellison's past victims and referenced specific incidents mirroring Keira's experiences. For the first time, Keira saw her pain echoed in public without her having to speak. She didn't write the article, but she read it like it was torn from her diary. The university scrambled to respond. A formal statement arrived via mass email, laced with neutrality. The university is reviewing past grievances and will ensure fair and impartial investigations. We are committed to diversity, equity, and academic integrity. But it was too late. Screenshots of Ellison's grading log, leaked by Marley, had already surfaced. His now infamous description of Keira, slow-minded but polite, had gone viral. Students marched across the quad, some carrying signs, others chalking formulas and quotes on the sidewalks. One message, scrawled in massive yellow ink outside the math building. "This is what brilliance looks like." And below it, Keira's project title. With Alicia's help, Keira spent her next days sharpening every line of her code. Alicia reviewed each segment like a battlefield strategist, editing, testing, questioning. This loop could create lag in classrooms with weak hardware. She pointed out, "Let's simplify. This UI needs contrast. Some of your students will be using second-hand screens." Every critique came with care. Every adjustment made the system stronger. They renamed the algorithm Blueprint. "It's more than math now," Alicia explained. "It's a map for surviving systems that were never built for you." The name stuck. Meanwhile, journalists reached out one after another. Keira turned most of them away. But one interview with a black female reporter from EdTech Now felt different. The headline the next morning: "They said she wasn't ready. Her code says otherwise." The story spread faster than any email from the university could contain. Within a week, 5 EdTech investors reached out to Alicia. 2 wanted early partnership talks. 1 asked about acquisition. Keira declined every offer. "I'm not selling this to anyone who'll bury it behind paywalls," she said. Alicia smiled. "Then we'll build it your way." But the higher Keira rose, the harder Ellison seemed to fall, and the more dangerous he became. First came the silence. He didn't show up to lectures. Substitutes filled in. His office hours were cancelled indefinitely. Then came the pressure. Keira received a sudden mid-semester review from the Academic Integrity Office. Again, this time for potential honor code breaches tied to external collaboration. A vague charge with no citation, but Marley had anticipated it. They printed Alicia's advisory disclosures, legal documents confirming her as an external mentor, and timestamps proving the university had already approved Keira's solo project status. They submitted everything before the inquiry could escalate. It vanished in less than 48. But Keira knew it was Ellison. Always from the shadows. Always pressing, hoping she'd collapse. Then the email came. Subject: private meeting request. Professor G. Ellison. It was brief. A request for a one-on-one discussion to resolve lingering academic misunderstandings. Marley was livid. "Do not go in there alone." But Alicia said something else. "If you feel ready, go. You're not the same girl he tried to break weeks ago." Keira stared at the email, then replied, 10 a.m., I'll be there. The air in Ellison's office was stale when she entered. Stacks of books lined the shelves, certificates framed with thin gold borders. A photo of him shaking hands with a Nobel laureate posed. Cold, calculated. He stood at the window when she arrived. Back turned. "Miss Holloway," he said. Close the door. She did. He turned slowly. His face was calmer than she expected. Too calm. I wanted to speak without interruption, without theatrics. She sat, not because he asked, but because it was her choice. Ellison leaned against the edge of his desk, hands folded. I've reviewed your project, he said. It's impressive. You have talent, even if you lack discipline. Keira said nothing. However, he continued, your recent behavior, your alliances, your decisions to air grievances in the court of public opinion are disappointing. She tilted her head. You mean exposing the truth? I mean choosing vengeance over growth. His voice was soft, calculated, the kind of softness that conceals sharp edges. I've survived decades in this institution, he said, not by accident, by strategy. You think a few blog posts and protest signs will change the core of this place? No, Keira said. But they'll make sure no one forgets what it's built on. His jaw tightened. You've put a target on your back, he said. You've made yourself into a symbol. That may be empowering now, but it won't last. She met his stare, unflinching. That depends on how many people keep pretending you're the standard. He stood fully now. There's a reason most students like you disappear, he said. You know how many tried before you? You think you're special? I think I'm the first one who brought receipts, Keira replied. His expression changed, tightened. Then he walked closer. His voice dropped lower. You should be careful who you associate with, he said. Miss Danvers has a history of overstepping. You could inherit that reputation. Sponsors disappear quickly when their investment becomes controversial. Is that a threat? It's a warning, he said, lips barely moving. There are ways to bury people without touching them. Slower, more permanent. She rose from her seat. You've buried enough brilliance for one lifetime. She moved toward the door, then stopped, turned. You didn't break me, she said. You gave me fuel. He stared. She reached for the doorknob. He smirked. Then sue me like the rest. The words sliced through the air like a dare. He knew exactly what he was doing. Pushing her, taunting her, trying to make her flinch. But Keira didn't blink. She left the room with her spine tall and her heart steady. Outside, the hallway was quiet. But she wasn't alone. At the far end, Marley waited, leaning against the wall. Earbuds in. Keira didn't say a word. She just kept walking. That evening, Alicia forwarded a confidential email to Keira. Subject line: immediate concern, Ellison's name removed from tenure roster pending review. And attached was a letter. A former faculty member had come forward, and she was ready to testify. The moment Keira stepped out of Dr. Ellison's office, her breath caught in her throat. Not from fear, but from the weight of what she'd just survived. She glanced at Marley, waiting by the corridor wall. Without a word, Keira reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out her phone. The voice memo app was still running. Elapsed time 42 minutes, 19 seconds. Every word, every threat, every racial veiled insult, captured. Marley's eyes widened. You got all of it. Keira nodded. He said, there are ways to bury people without touching them. That's not policy. That's power abuse. Marley took the phone, backed up the file to a cloud drive, and encrypted the original. We need to move fast, she said. This can't go through university channels. They'll bury it before the audio finishes uploading. Keira hesitated. You're sure? Marley turned, eyes sharp. They put you on a watch list. They stripped your grade. They tried to erase your work. He looked you in the face and threatened your future. You don't owe them silence. Keira exhaled. She wasn't just holding a recording. She was holding proof of pattern, the one thing Ellison never thought she'd have. By nightfall, they had a plan. They created a new anonymous account on a campus justice blog, under the name Unmuted Proof. Alongside the audio, they posted a short message. This is what quiet racism sounds like in academia. You know the name. Now hear the voice. The post went live by 11:08 p.m. It had over 3,000 shares. By midnight, local news outlets had picked it up. The next morning, the university's math department looked like a war zone. Students marched through the quad, holding signs that read, "Tenure is not a shield." Listen to the tape. We are not slow learners. Faculty were split. Some defended Ellison, citing his decades of contribution. Others broke their silence, quietly admitting they'd heard things before, but never had proof. Classrooms emptied. Faculty meetings were interrupted. Students began demanding a full investigation, citing the leaked grading logs And now, the tape. On it, Allison's voice was unmistakable. Cool, menacing, composed. There are ways to bury people without touching them. You should be careful who you associate with. Miss Danvers has a history of overstepping. You could inherit that reputation. The implication wasn't just racial. It was generational, systemic. And now it was public. The university issued a statement within hours. We have placed Professor Grant Ellison on temporary suspension pending an independent review. We take all allegations of bias and misconduct seriously. A third-party ethics board has been commissioned, but the students weren't waiting for bureaucracy. They filled lecture halls with sit-ins. They organized town halls under banners that read, "Code isn't just math, it's survival." Marley live-streamed from Keira's dorm as Alicia Danvers joined via video call, addressing hundreds of viewers across campus. "This isn't about one professor," Alicia said. "It's about every door that's been quietly shut behind students who looked like Keira. It's about every mind labeled slow because it didn't mirror the one holding the gradebook." Keira didn't speak much. She didn't need to. The recording had already spoken for her. But behind the storm of headlines and hashtags, a quiet betrayal was brewing. It came 3 days later, in the form of a bland email. Subject: Math Innovation Competition. Finalist notification. The message was short. "Thank you for your participation. We regret to inform you that your project, Blueprint, a Framework for Adaptive Learning Equity, has not been selected for the final showcase. We wish you the best in your future endeavors." No ranking, no explanation, just erased. Keira stared at the screen, unmoving. The same project that had gained national attention, that had received outside funding, that had been praised by experts, now suddenly unworthy of recognition after Ellison's suspension. She forwarded the message to Alicia. 2 minutes later, her phone rang. "Keira, listen to me," Alicia said. "This is retaliation. They're pulling you to save face, to quiet the noise." Kira's voice cracked. "They said it was about innovation, but now I'm too loud for their version of progress. They're trying to teach you your place again," Alicia said. "Only now they can't do it with grades or threats, so they're using silence." Marley was already on her laptop. "Checking the finalist list," she said. "Half the projects are basic theory exercises. One of them is literally a calculator app with a new UI. This is garbage." Keira didn't speak. Her body was still, but her mind spun like a hurricane. "They wanted a headline to say they acted on Ellison," she whispered. "So they suspended him. But if I win something, if I stand on that stage, it proves the system failed. They can't have that." "They don't want justice," Alicia added. "They want control." Keira sat back in her chair, eyes burning. This wasn't about a prize. It was about a precedent. She didn't need validation from a plaque. But the silence, the sudden erasure after everything, was its own violence. A reminder that even with truth on your side, power plays by its own rules. Still, she wasn't done. She reached for her phone. "If they won't let me speak on their stage," she said, "then I'll build one of my own." Just as she prepared to post a public statement, Marley interrupted, her face pale. "Wait," she said, staring at the screen. "The finalist list. It just changed." She turned the laptop toward Keira. Kira's name was back, but now it had an asterisk. Finalist. Pending review due to external influence. The asterisk was a scar. A quiet slash against her name that said everything without saying anything. Finalist pending review due to external influence. It wasn't reinstatement. It was a warning shot. A subtle public note that Keira's place on the list was still under consideration. That her merit was conditional. By morning, the screenshot had already gone viral. After being stripped, Keira Holloway returns to the finalist list, but with an asterisk. Black brilliance always comes with a footnote. They want her present, not powerful. But the public wasn't quiet this time. Students flooded the university's official accounts with calls for full reinstatement. Activists posted video clips of Keira's original submission presentation side by side with lesser approved projects. Hashtags surged. "Remove the asterisk. Let Keira speak. No more conditional genius." Under mounting pressure, the university issued another vague statement. "All finalist statuses will be honored. We maintain confidence in our impartial review process. The competition will proceed as scheduled." Still no apology, no explanation, no acknowledgement of why she'd been removed in the first place. But the message was clear. She could present. So she would. The day of the final showcase arrived under a heavy sky. The university's main auditorium had been converted into a live stream arena. Camera crews, digital countdowns, and a glass podium center stage. Seats were filled with investors, faculty, media, and a student audience that had grown louder with every injustice. Keira arrived alone.
No fanfare.
No advisor badge. No faculty sponsor at her side. The other contestants had departments backing them. Professors greeting judges in hushed tones. Assistants rehearsing cues. Keira walked to her green room and found nothing waiting for her. No mentor. No prep crew. Just her laptop, a water bottle, and a press pass labeled only with Keira Holloway, participant. She stared at the nameplate, then peeled it off. She wasn't just a participant. She was the disruption. When her name was called, the silence was almost eerie. She walked across the stage slowly, eyes steady, jaw tight. The lights hit her face. The cameras zoomed in, and she began. 3 months ago, Keira said, I was told directly and indirectly that I didn't belong in this department. She paused, let the words hang. That I was too slow, too ambitious, too emotional, too everything that didn't look like them. Gasps rippled through the crowd. But instead of leaving, I wrote code. She launched the demo. Blueprint loaded on the screen. Smooth, fast, seamless. Blueprint is a real-time adaptive learning algorithm designed not for perfection, but for potential. It doesn't punish mistakes. It learns from them. Because that's how students grow. Her hands moved quickly, navigating simulations, walking through use cases in rural schools, underfunded classrooms, outdated tech environments. The algorithm adjusted on screen, in real time, highlighting its flexibility, its reach. Her voice never wavered. We've built entire education systems assuming everyone learns the same way. They don't. I didn't. She glanced at the front row. Some judges were nodding. One leaned forward. A few students in the balcony stood up, filming her every word. I wasn't supposed to make it to this stage, Keira continued. But I'm here, and I brought receipts. The final slide appeared. Math is not neutral. Blueprint makes it human. Then silence. For a beat. Then one clap. Then two. Then a wave. Students on their feet. Judges exchanging glances. Investors pulling out phones. Marley stood in the back, hands shaking, filming the moment. And still, no university official took the mic. Keira exited the stage, not to cheers, but to a standing rebellion. It felt like victory, but she knew better than to relax. Hours passed. Backstage, the finalists waited in separate green rooms. Judges had retreated to deliberate. The live stream switched to recorded content. Marley finally burst in. You broke them. Keira smiled weakly. I gave them no other option. Then Marley's face changed. Phone in hand. Wait, she held up the screen. It was a tweet from a verified faculty journalist known for academic leaks. Sources tell me Keira Holloway's project may have been ghostwritten. Hearing whispers that outside consultants helped construct the code. Investigation brewing. Kira's chest went still.
No. That's not.
There's more, Marley said, scrolling. Commenters are quoting Ellison. They say he told a colleague that no freshman builds that alone. Kira's voice dropped. He's still pulling strings. Alicia called seconds later. I'm already on it, she said. These rumors are legally reckless. But they're meant to taint your win before it's even announced. They're setting the stage for a reversal, Marley muttered. Even if you win, they'll call it unfair. Keira sat down, suddenly nauseous. I did the work, she whispered. Every line, every function. I even rebuilt it from scratch after the sabotage. And we can prove that, Alicia said. You logged every commit, every timestamp, every draft. This isn't about plagiarism. This is about disbelief. They didn't think someone like her could do it. So now, they had to rewrite the story. Not by failing her, but by discrediting her success. Marley grabbed her shoulder. You already presented. You already went viral. You already forced the world to look. Whatever they try now, it won't erase that. Keira nodded slowly, but she could feel it happening again. Not erased. Disqualified in disguise. The applause had barely faded, and already the knives were out. Just as Keira closed her laptop in frustration, a new notification pinged across her screen. Private message. Anonymous. I was in the judging room. You need to see what was said before they vote. Attached a video clip. Keira hit play, and the first voice she heard was a judge calling her a diversity pick. The video clip was short, just under 90 seconds, but it was all Keira needed to see. She watched as a judge, seated casually around a conference table, leaned back and muttered the words, "She's clearly smart, but let's not pretend this isn't a political win for them. It's convenient. Black female first-gen controversy behind her. Makes for good PR." Another nodded. No one objected. The decision wasn't about innovation. It was about narrative management. Keira didn't cry. She didn't even flinch. She simply handed the clip to Marley and said, "Send it to Alicia." By the next morning, it was on every major social channel. The caption read, "When winning isn't enough. This is how they define Black excellence behind closed doors." The backlash was instant. Students erupted again. A sit-in swelled in front of the administration building. Faculty from outside departments signed open letters in support of Keira. And then the twist they never saw coming hit the campus like a shockwave. A student volunteer, Tommy Reyes, sophomore white, media team intern, posted a public confession on his personal blog. "I was part of the tech crew working the competition. I overheard Professor Ellison speaking to a judge during the early deliberation phase. He said, 'You can't seriously believe she wrote that entire thing. Someone had to help her, put pressure on her codebase, make them verify it.' That's when I was asked to tip off a journalist I knew. I did it, and I regret it. The ghostwriting rumor was fabricated. Completely. I'm sorry, Keira." Within hours, screenshots confirmed his story. A digital trail showed the fake tip source. Emails were traced back to the university server used in Ellison's department. And that's when the dam broke. 3 former students, 2 Black women and 1 Latina, filed joint legal action against the university. Their statements cited racial targeting, grade tampering, and intentional career sabotage under Ellison's mentorship. They referenced Keira's case as the final straw. The national media caught on. Headlines blazed. Math professor's pattern of racial targeting exposed through student brilliance. How a Black freshman sparked a university reckoning. Keira, once a quiet name on a midterm watch list, now trended across platforms. "Blueprint justice. Believe Black students." She wrote it. A week later, the university sent out a formal announcement during a live press briefing. The dean stepped up, face tight, voice rehearsed. "We acknowledge serious lapses in oversight and commit to a full review of internal processes. Professor Grant Ellison has been placed on indefinite suspension and is no longer affiliated with the Department of Mathematical Sciences. We are also proud to announce the winner of this year's Innovation in Mathematics competition, Keira Holloway, for her project Blueprint. No asterisk. No apology. Just truth." Keira didn't attend the press conference. She watched it from Marley's laptop, sitting in their usual corner in the library, the same one they'd first used to map Ellison's patterns on sticky notes. She sat quietly, hands folded, absorbing the words she never thought she'd hear. Winner. Not in protest. Not in pity. But in merit. Still, she felt the hollowness in the way it was said. A university covering its own tracks. Not an institution celebrating its student, but a bureaucracy trying to save face. But none of that mattered now. Because something else was happening behind the scenes. Alicia called that night. "Sit down," she said, not bothering with greetings. Keira froze. "Why? What happened?" Alicia exhaled like she'd been holding it all day. "You just got an offer." "For what?" "For Blueprint." Keira blinked.
From who?
Alicia hesitated, then said the name. Quantia Systems. One of the top 5 education tech firms in the world. Developers of global classroom software, digital tutoring platforms, AI-based grading tools, titans in the space. They've offered 7 figures, licensing rights, full integration, global rollout, immediate onboarding. Keira's pulse jumped. 7 figures? "They'll want control," Alicia added carefully. "It's not just the code, it's the direction, the branding, the update." Keira sat still. This wasn't a donation. It was a buyout. Marley paced across the room. "That's money that could change your life. Your family's life. Hell, your neighborhood." Keira looked at Alicia through the screen. "They want to own it. They want to silence it," Alicia said. "Why offer so much?" "Because it's already working," Alicia said, "and because it came from someone they couldn't predict." Silence settled over them, the kind that splits a moment in two. Keira stood and looked at the wall where her first sketches still hung, wrinkled, tacked together by thumbtacks and hope. She thought of the kids who'd one day use Blueprint, the ones labeled slow, behind, not fit, The ones who didn't have Alicia Danvers walking ahead of them, or a Marley Cross beside them. She picked up the phone. "No," she said. Alicia smiled. "You sure?" "I didn't build it to sell," Keira said. "I built it to set free." Hours later, as Alicia typed a formal decline letter to Quantia Systems, another email popped up in her inbox. Subject: urgent. You're being watched. They're trying to patent Blueprint under a different name. Attached a legal filing. Filed yesterday. By a shell company linked to a former Ellison associate, the patent filing hit like a thunderclap. Filed under a shell company. Backdated. The language nearly identical to Blueprint's code structure. But buried in the metadata, Alicia found a name: H. Baxter. Dr. Harold Baxter. Ellison's former research collaborator and longtime departmental ally. The same man who'd publicly defended Ellison in every faculty statement since his suspension. Keira stood in Alicia's office, heart pounding. The walls buzzed with tension. Outside, rain tapped against the window. Slow and steady, like the clock ticking down on another theft in motion. "They're trying to steal it," Marley said, pacing. "Rename it, reroute the ownership, and file it before Keira gets her final IP paperwork through. They'll claim it's a derivative." Alicia's jaw tightened. "Not if we get ahead of it." Within 24 hours, Alicia had filed a cease and desist through her firm's legal network, freezing the fraudulent patent attempt. But the damage was done. Word had already leaked. "Corporation tries to claim black students' algorithm," became the latest headline on national morning shows. Pundits debated ownership, ethics in race and tech. Anchors referred to Keira not as a student anymore, but as a symbol. A symbol she never asked to be. By the end of the week, journalists swarmed outside the university gates. Cameras flashed when she walked to class. News anchors camped near the math building like it was a courtroom. One network introduced her as the Black Genius. They tried to erase. The phrase stuck. It appeared on signs, hashtags, even t-shirts printed by student activists. She'd become an icon before she'd even turned 20. But Keira wasn't chasing iconography. She was chasing impact. So when Quantia Systems' legal team called again, this time doubling their offer, Keira didn't even flinch. "I'm not interested," she said firmly. The voice on the other end tried persuasion, then diplomacy, then guilt. "You could fund a lifetime of change with that money, Miss Holloway. Let us amplify it." She cut them off. "I don't want amplification," she said. "I want access." And that single sentence became her mission statement. With Alicia's help, Keira founded the Blueprint Initiative, a non-profit licensing model that would offer the algorithm free of charge to low-income school districts and community learning centers. Larger, well-funded institutions could purchase limited licenses. The proceeds funneled directly into underserved schools. It was radical, unprofitable by design, and unstoppable by conviction. Alicia assembled a small board, half technologists, half educators. Marley joined as Director of Research and Equity, turning her journalism training into investigative advocacy. "This isn't just about code," Marley told a local reporter. "It's about rewriting the rules that decide who gets to learn, who gets to lead, and who gets left behind." The initiative's first pilot launched in Georgia, Keira's home state, a small rural district where half the classrooms still used outdated desktops and borrowed Wi-Fi from a nearby library. When the first results rolled in, even skeptics fell silent. Students' math comprehension rates rose by 43% in 6 weeks. Dropout rates fell by 15% in 1 semester. Keira visited the district personally. The children didn't know her as a headline or a symbol. They just knew her as Miss Keira, the girl who made math talk back. One afternoon, after demonstrating the algorithm to a group of 7th graders, a quiet boy in a red hoodie tugged her sleeve and said, "It makes me feel smart." She knelt down, voice soft. "You already are," he smiled, shy but sure. "Not before this." That night, she cried quietly in the hotel bathroom. Not from exhaustion, but from release. Every ounce of humiliation, every word Ellison had used to break her, had somehow transformed into something luminous. Meanwhile, Marley's new investigation had begun to dig deeper into academia's underbelly. Her series, published under the title Tenure, The Fortress That Buried Accountability, exposed how universities weaponize tenure to shield discrimination, dismiss student complaints, and silence whistleblowers. Using Ellison's case as a blueprint, she uncovered at least 7 other institutions with near-identical protection clauses. The story went national. Universities scrambled to issue damage control statements. Politicians weighed in. And for the first time in decades, academic tenure reform became a national conversation. Keira watched it all unfold quietly, often sitting beside Alicia in long planning meetings, eyes tired but focused. You know, Alicia said one night, closing her laptop, you could have taken that 7-figure check and vanished. Most would have. Keira smiled faintly. If I did, the next girl like me would still be called slow. I can't build freedom just for myself. Alicia leaned back, studying her. You remind me of who I was before they broke me. They didn't break you, Keira said softly. They just didn't know you were coming back stronger. Alicia smiled, eyes glistening. I didn't. You did. Weeks passed. Blueprint gained traction across the country. Tech publications hailed Keira's model as the next great education revolution, but not everyone celebrated. Behind the scenes, resistance simmered. Private education companies saw her open access licensing as a threat to their profit structures. Some professors publicly questioned her credentials, arguing that social activism shouldn't replace mathematical excellence. And quiet murmurs, always the same kind, began to reappear online. She didn't do it alone. She's just lucky the race card hit at the right time. Affirmative innovation. But this time Keira didn't hide. She spoke. At a live symposium, standing under bright lights and a banner that read Equity Through Innovation. She looked directly into the cameras. When I built Blueprint, I didn't build it to be liked, she said. I built it because I got tired of being told what I couldn't be. And if the only thing you see when you look at me is my color, then it means you still can't see the code. The room erupted. The quote went viral, and Keira Holloway's name became a movement. One cold January morning, as snow dusted the university lawn, Alicia walked into her office, holding an envelope. She looked at it for a long time before speaking. From the court clerk, she said finally. You've been served. Keira's brow furrowed. What? Alicia handed it over carefully. Across the top, bold letters read, Grant Ellison versus Keira Holloway, Alicia Danvers, and the Blueprint Initiative, filed under defamation and damages to reputation. The world spun for a second. Marley, standing near the window, froze mid-sentence. He's suing you? She whispered. After everything? Alicia exhaled, steady but sharp. He's not after money. He's after silence. Keira's voice trembled for the first time in weeks. He's trying to rewrite the story again. Alicia nodded grimly. And this time he's doing it in a courtroom. Keira opened the envelope. Inside, beneath the lawsuit notice, was a handwritten note in black ink.
No signature.
Just 5 words. See you on the stand. The courthouse smelled of old wood and cold air, like time itself had been trapped inside for decades, waiting for someone to challenge it. Keira sat at the defendant's table beside Alicia, hands folded, her expression calm but unreadable. Marley was behind them, laptop open, streaming updates for the growing online audience that had followed every twist of the story. The name Grant Ellison, v. Keira Holloway et al., glared from the docket like a scar. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but everyone knew this trial was being fought in 2 arenas, inside the courtroom and across the digital world. Outside, protesters filled the courthouse steps. Some held signs that read, Truth on Trial. Others simply carried Keira's face beneath the words. They called her slow. The courtroom itself was a study in tension. Ellison sat at his table, flanked by his legal team, 3 men in sharp suits, who looked like they billed by the breath. His face was taut, eyes hollow. For the first time, he didn't look like the man who had ruled the classroom with quiet authority. He looked cornered. The proceedings began with a formality that felt surreal. Ellison's attorney rose first. Your Honor, this case is not about race. It is about reputation. Professor Ellison has been falsely defamed by a coordinated smear campaign led by Miss Holloway and her associates. Alicia stood, her voice measured. Your Honor, this case is about accountability. When a man spends decades using his position to humiliate, suppress and discredit black students, truth isn't defamation, it's exposure. The judge, a composed woman with silver hair and a gaze that cut through pretense, nodded. Proceed. And with that, decades of silence cracked open. The university tried to stay neutral, but the subpoena forced their hand. Boxes of documents arrived. Emails, internal reports, archived evaluations, all sealed until now. Among them was Ellison's private grading log, the same one Keira had received months ago in an unmarked envelope. When Alicia presented it, the courtroom went still. Projected on the wall, the log glowed under dim lights. Line after line of student evaluations, coded language, and adjustments. Understands content but lacks critical reasoning. Overconfident despite average output. Polite, but mentally sluggish. Then in the middle of the list, Holloway Keira. Slow-minded but polite. The words hung there like an open wound. Alicia faced the judge. Your Honor, this is not academic assessment. This is bias, systematized and disguised as intellect. Ellison's lawyer tried to object, but the damage was already visible. The jurors shifted uncomfortably. The judge's expression darkened. Alicia turned toward Ellison. Professor Ellison, would you care to explain your methodology? He straightened his posture, reciting his defense like an old script. These are internal shorthand notes meant for personal reference. Tools for evaluating performance consistency. Consistency, Alicia repeated slowly, walking toward him. Yet the only students described as slow, emotional, or unfit for advanced study are all students of color. Consistency, indeed. A ripple of murmurs filled the gallery. When the witnesses took the stand, the courtroom air thickened. First came Dana Carter, the sophomore whose notes had once appeared in Ellison's log as argumentative. Adjust down. She spoke carefully, voice trembling at first, then firming with every word. He called me emotional for asking why I lost points on an equation he said was correct. After that, I stopped speaking in class. My final grade dropped from an A to a C. I switched majors the next semester. Then Camila Rodriguez, the Latina graduate student who had been denied research opportunities. He said I wasn't ready for conceptual rigor. My white lab partner made the same mistake I did, and he got promoted. Every testimony painted another layer of the same pattern. Degradation disguised as evaluation. And then finally, it was Keira's turn. She walked to the stand, her composure steady, her voice low but resonant. Miss Holloway, Alicia began gently. Can you tell the court what this has cost you? Keira took a long breath. At first it cost me confidence, she said. Then credibility. And then almost my future. She looked directly at Ellison. He didn't just give me bad grades. He gave me labels. He made sure the world saw me through his handwriting before they ever saw my work. The courtroom was silent. Even the stenographer paused for a moment before continuing. Alicia nodded. And how did you respond? I built something he said I wasn't capable of. Keira replied. I built blueprint for every student who was told they were too slow, too emotional, too unfit, because maybe we're not behind. Maybe we're being held back. The judge's gaze softened slightly. Even Ellison's own lawyer shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Ellison leaned forward. Miss Holloway, you're implying that every challenge you faced was because of me. Maybe you simply couldn't handle the rigor. Keira turned toward him, unflinching. Maybe you couldn't handle being wrong. Then came cross-examination. Ellison's attorney tried to dismantle every testimony, calling them emotional, biased, or irrelevant. But each time, Alicia countered with facts, grading discrepancies, timelines, digital proof of grade alterations. Finally, Alicia asked to call one more witness. The courtroom doors opened, and in walked Dr. Susan Clark, a retired faculty member who had once shared an office with Ellison. Her presence alone drew gasps. She took the stand calmly, folding her hands. I taught alongside Dr. Ellison for 12 years, she said. I warned the administration repeatedly about his language and selective grading. I was told it was a matter of teaching style. Alicia nodded. Dr. Clark, did you ever confront him? Yes, Clark said. Once. After a black student's thesis was rejected despite perfect scoring, he told me, some students just don't have the cognitive temperament for abstraction. A stunned silence filled the room. Alicia's voice was quiet now. And who was that student? Dr. Clark's eyes met Keira's. Her name was Alicia Danvers. The courtroom gasped. The circle had closed. Ellison shifted uncomfortably, face flushing red. His mask, decades in the making, finally cracked. When Alicia gave her closing argument, the room was deathly still. This is not one man's prejudice, she said, pacing slowly. It's the architecture of a system that told him he could get away with it. A system where tenure becomes armor, where silence becomes complicity, and where slow becomes a euphemism for black. She stopped at Keira's side. And yet, the woman he tried to label has built something the world can't ignore. The question before you isn't whether she defamed him. The question is, how long will we keep defending the people who defame brilliance? Her voice broke on the last word. When she sat down, Keira felt the weight of history pressing against her shoulders, and the faintest tremor of release. The jury deliberated for hours that felt like days. When they returned, no one breathed. The judge read slowly, her tone unwavering. The court finds in favor of the defendants. The plaintiff's claim of defamation is dismissed with prejudice. A hush fell over the room. But the judge wasn't finished. She looked at Ellison. However, this court is disturbed by the consistent pattern of racial bias evident in your professional conduct. I am formally referring this case to the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights and recommending full academic review of your tenure privileges and pension status. The words landed like thunder. Alicia's hand shot to her mouth. Marley covered her face. Keira stared forward, eyes wet but steady. Ellison slumped back, color draining from his face. Decades of power dissolved in a few carefully chosen sentences. Then the judge turned to Keira. "Miss Holloway," she said softly, "what you have endured should never have been possible in an institution of learning. You turned pain into progress. Let the record show that brilliance cannot be buried." The gavel struck. The sound was final. As the courtroom emptied, a court officer handed Alicia a sealed envelope, marked confidential evidence submission. Inside, a flash drive, a note attached read,
"You don't know the half of it. Check the files. Ellison wasn't acting alone. The letter arrived in a black envelope."
No university seal. No announcement.
Just one line embossed in silver. "The Board of Trustees hereby confirms. Grant Ellison's tenure is officially revoked." Below it, a second line. "Effective immediately, he is permanently disassociated from the university in all official and academic capacities." It wasn't just an end. It was a historical first. In over a century, no tenured professor at the institution had ever been stripped of title, pension, and legacy in a single motion. But Ellison had not acted alone. The flash drive handed to Alicia in the courtroom revealed a hidden file trail of internal protection memos, covering complaints from at least 8 students over a span of 15 years. Admin knew. They'd always known. But without public pressure, they never acted.
Now, under the scrutiny of national eyes, the board had no more exits.
Keira didn't celebrate. She didn't gloat. Instead, she quietly took the flash drive, sealed it in an envelope, and mailed it to the Department of Education's Office for Civil Rights. Let someone else carry the next fight. She had a new one to start. The news of Ellison's removal made headlines, but what followed next changed everything. Keira received an official email from the university president's office. Subject: commencement. Honor nomination. Keira Holloway. They wanted to recognize her, publicly, with an honorary doctorate in mathematics, for her contributions to educational equity, innovation, and systemic reform. At first, Keira hesitated. The same institution that tried to erase her now wanted to enshrine her. It felt hollow. Until Alicia took her hand and said, "This isn't for them. This is for the next girl who walks into that room and sees your name hanging above the door instead of his." So she accepted. The ceremony was packed, not with formality, but with fire. Faculty, students, activists, reporters, all stood when Keira walked across the stage, in a deep maroon cap and gown, her curls free, her eyes clear. As the chancellor handed her the honorary degree, the room erupted. Applause thundered. Marley wept quietly in the front row. Alicia, standing in the wings, mouthed the words, "You earned every letter." Keira didn't speak long, just enough to say this: legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you build when everyone tells you not to try. Her voice trembled on the last word. But she didn't flinch. She looked out across the crowd, scanning faces she didn't know, then found one she did. Dana Carter, sitting with other former students, who had once been buried under Ellison's grading log, now front row for a history they helped write. Months later, the Blueprint Initiative expanded into its next form. Blueprint Labs, a tech institute providing coding education, STEM mentorship, and algorithm design courses to underserved students across the country. Located in Southview, Georgia, Keira's hometown, the headquarters stood on the same land that once held her crumbling middle school. Now it gleamed with floor-to-ceiling glass, student innovation pods, and murals of black mathematicians and engineers across its lobby walls. Students came in from all over, some bused from rural counties, others logging in remotely from urban centers, where math was still taught with outdated textbooks and rigid testing models. At the center of it all was Keira. Part founder, part guide, all legacy. She taught once a week. Quietly, privately. A room of 12. Always 12. Hand-picked from applications that asked one simple question. What have you been told you can't do? She read every answer. Because she'd written her own version. Once. And no one had believed her. Back at the university, the classroom where it all started, room 3-2, theoretical math, underwent quiet renovations. New paint, new boards, new faculty. The nameplate outside changed too. Not with ceremony but with truth. It now read, the Keira Holloway Lecture Hall, in honor of innovation, equity and resilience. No one announced it, but students noticed. Photos spread online. Activist pages posted side by sides of the old Ellison plaque and the new engraving. Underneath, the caption, we are no longer sitting in silence. One day, Keira returned. Not as a student, not even as a guest. She walked the halls of the math department with quiet purpose, past students who whispered and pointed, but not with mockery, with reverence. She entered room 302. The chairs had changed, the lighting was warmer, but the structure remained. She walked slowly to the back. Row 3, far left, the seat where she once sat, small and invisible. But someone was there, a young black girl, no older than 17, early admission, maybe. Curly hair pulled back in a tight puff, notebook clutched in her lap, eyes wide as she stared at her screen. Keira froze. The girl looked up. And smiled. You're her, she said. Keira nodded gently. What are you working on? The girl held up a rough draft of a mathematical learning model. Unpolished, handwritten, full of potential. It's not done yet, she said. But I want to build something that helps kids who learn differently. Keira studied it for a moment, then sat beside her. You're already building it, she said softly. The girl's eyes lit up. They told me not to take this class until junior year. Said I'd probably drop out. Keira smiled. Then make sure they see your name on the door before they even walk in. As Keira stood to leave, the girl tapped her arm. Miss Holloway, she said, do you think Blueprint will ever teach college students too? Keira paused, then turned back, eyes gleaming. I think you just gave me my next project. No one should have to prove they're human just to be heard. If Keira's story made you feel something, don't scroll past it. Type yes if you believe brilliance deserves more than bias. Subscribe if this broke your heart.